With this video, what I would like to do is take a look at some footage from Alien. In particular, there was a scene that I talked about in my last video in regards to the slow-moving alien, and I wanted to look at the end scene to that film, in particular when Ripley is on board the narcissist with the stowaway creature and she has to fight it off. Likewise, I will also be examining some footage from Aliens. For the purposes of this video, I won't watch through the entire scene necessarily, just what I need to examine to get my point across. In particular, the reason for this whole examination is the idea that we have a slow-moving creature, and I think that it isn't a choice on their part for it to be slow. The idea was it was slow, the creature in the latex suit. It wasn't something that they wanted necessarily. It's something that they had to work with, the filmmakers. The idea they're working with technology that was inadequate, essentially. It's the same idea with James Cameron in Terminator 1. The idea that originally he wanted a liquid metal Terminator in the first film, but the technology in 1984 would not have allowed it. So they had to alter the design of the creature in response to the technology that they had to work with, also a limited budget. Even with a big budget, it just simply wasn't possible to create that type of creature in 1984. It was barely possible in 1991. The budget for the film bankrupted the studio practically, and the film almost didn't get made. And Alien, it's the same idea. They had a limited budget and they had inadequate technology to perhaps convey what they really wanted. For instance, Geiger said, "Oh, what if we could have created an alien landscape, a Geiger-esque landscape where everything is biomechanical, just a truly alien world." But they didn't have the means, obviously, to do that. So there's just a lot of things that got scrapped, or in terms of the final product, what we wound up with was a product of the means that they had to produce it. It doesn't accurately reflect what I think they had imagined. And the idea that, of course, you had a lot of different minds involved with this project. The idea, Dan O'Bannon wrote the screenplay along with Ronald Shusett, and they had various ideas. And then you had Walter Hill, and I forget the other guys, the producers who had their own contributions and towards the screenplay, and then of course Dan O'Bannon and Mobius and Ron Cobb and Ridley Scott and Geiger, you know, these master artists who are all collaborating together towards a unified group vision, a composite body of various imaginary mediums, so to speak, to use medium in the sense of someone who's divinating like an image or communication from something beyond what's ordinary. And the idea that it all sort of comes together rather well, but I do think it was entirely intentional. And the idea, again, intentional in the sense that with this creature here, I don't think they intended it to be so lethargic, so geriatric towards the end of the film, or throughout the film for that matter. The idea that it's shot in the shadows to conceal the fact that they are working with a man in a suit, and not only that, a suit that is unable to allow the wearer complete range of motion, or to be able to move quickly. He had to move at a snail's pace for a reason, but no scene is that more obvious than the final scene of the film, where the creature is unveiled, and we have a chance to sort of look at it for an extended period of time, relatively speaking. So I'll start the scene here. Okay, that always gets me, the jump scare, and it's really effective here. But you'll notice it works rather well because you have these dolphin head sort of chrome tubes, and next to it is conveniently an alien dome that is shaped in a very similar form. You'll notice here, of course, that it's opaque. The dome of the creature is opaque, and originally with the design, they wanted to use something that was more transparent. Originally, the dome was transparent. You could see the skull inside. And this was something that we never saw come to life until Alien Isolation, really, where they were able to use the original design by Geiger. And originally, during the production of Alien, or post-production, I suppose, they had intended to produce some transparent suits. The idea that you could see the veins and the skeleton of the creature, but for reasons of cost and just the practicality of the technology, they were unable to do that. But, and this is something that I want to bring up here, the idea to champion or defend the use of digital technology, there are certain things that you can't easily bring to life through practical effect. It's not always feasible, and the idea of a translucent suit where you can see the skull, you can see the transparent skin and the veins and all of that detail, sometimes it's just not practical to use practical effects. And the idea in Alien Isolation, we saw perhaps a more accurate rendition of Geiger's original vision of the creature with the transparent dome. And in Alien Covenant, you have various renditions of the creature and sort of nascent or underdeveloped states that more accurately represent Geiger's original design, more so than the creature here in the original film. The idea that you have an opaque dome, you have this slow-moving creature. Despite the fact, ironically, that Ash in the film describes it as being this perfect organism. And in the rest of the scene, we will see that it is far from perfect. The idea that if it were, it would have leapt out of there instantly, or it wouldn't have. What is it doing here when it reaches out for her so suddenly? Is it reaching for her, or is it merely stretching its hand? But why do it in such a transparent manner? This is a transparent jump scare. It's effective, mind you, given the way that they've disguised it. They've disguised the creature to make it blend in with its surroundings. And with jump scares, it's all about timing. You give us long enough to look at our surroundings, our setting, to feel safe, and then the play is the thing wherein we catch the conscience of the king. And here our conscience is aptly caught, where it reaches out and startles us because we've had enough time to let our guards down, because what we're looking at appears to be safe, because the creature is camouflaged. It blends in with its surroundings. But another thing that I want to mention here is the idea of the hand. It reaches quickly, and it demonstrates here in this moment that it is capable of quick motion. But this is, of course, offset or contrasted by its geriatric motion later in the scene. So Ripley runs into the cabinet here, or the closet, and she hides. And she gets dressed. I'm going to move forward here to where she climbs out and sits in her chair. And she begins to activate these different gases to sort of chase the creature out of hiding. And you'll notice here in this shot, the creature is sort of tucked away underneath a space of the hull of the narcissist. In between these ducts and these vents and this circuitry, it's almost become a part of the scenery. Again, because it's biomechanical in nature, it blends in with the mechanical body of the ship.
You are my lucky star.
Now, in this particular part of the scene, the pivotal moment of the scene is where Ripley chases the creature out of hiding. Now, we have an interesting situation here where the creature is struck with this gas, and I can't remember what type of gas it is. We assume that it's heated. We can see almost something combust in the back behind it, sort of hot gas or something to sort of push it out of its hiding space. And in this moment, does the creature bolt from its hiding space like a cat struck with water? Despite the fact that the animal may ostensibly be sleeping, you'll notice that with cats, as soon as they are awake, are capable of lightning-quick motion, the idea cat-like reflexes. And yet, this creature here, despite the fact that we have just been presented with a moment earlier, its capability for quick motion, it resumes its strangely slow, laborious way of moving when it is struck. It does not spring into action here. It does not shoot out of its hiding spot like a cat struck with water. I'm going to turn off the subtitles here. Subtitle disabled. And again, we have this awkward screeching and flailing of limbs, and it seems almost helpless in this situation, at least ostensibly for a moment. It is unable to defend itself. It is unable to sort of react in a way that you would expect from what Ash has previously described as the perfect organism. The idea that, and this is something that I believe is rectified or addressed in Aliens with James Cameron. And this is something that I want to point out here. It's not always a question of technology either. It's also a question of what the script demands. And at times it can be a little transparent. And for that, I want to go to a different scene quickly. The idea you have aliens with the facehugger. And in this scene, Newt is cocooned to the wall of the atmospheric processor, and she has an egg placed in front of her, and it is about to hatch. And when it hatches, in this particular scene, the script demands that she survive. And the writers, for whatever reason, are unable to provide us with a convincing reason as to why she is not face-hugged in this moment. Everyone else is in the film. Right now they're being cocooned just like the others. Their signs are real low, but they ain't dead, man. Well, Newt's in the same situation, except in her case, she can't possibly come to the same end as the colonists, right? She's a child. God forbid. They have this prolonged state of tension now where you're wondering whether or not Newt is going to snuff it, so to speak. She's placed in this precarious situation, precarious to be placed on the edge of a knife, and it can go either way. It's very much up in the air, except it's not. And in this scene, the writers, through a rather transparent effort to supply the script with a device that it needs to preserve Newt, and the idea that the tension is maintained ostensibly so long as Newt is alive but in danger. And in order to extend that danger and to keep Newt in danger, but to not ever really have her be in danger of dying, they make the facehugger in Aliens, in this scene, and in this scene only, slow. In Kane's situation, in Alien, the alien shoots out of the egg in under a second. And in here, we have this very, very slow creature, which gives Newt enough time to administer the air siren scream that she has to notify Ripley, who's looking for her. The creature is almost struggling to get out of the egg. It almost seems, again, strangely geriatric, just like the alien on board the Narcissus here. We have a parallel where Newt is in danger and there is tension. And the idea, Ripley is in danger, there is tension. You have to be able to maintain that. In face of certain promises that certain characters may have made, that the script may have made, that you're dealing with this unstoppable killing machine. If it was truly unstoppable, if it had the lightning-quick reflexes of a cat, this plan probably wouldn't have worked, or it wouldn't have drawn out, it wouldn't have unfolded like this. The idea where the creature crawls like a snail out of its hiding place. And notice how slowly it's moving, giving us and Ripley plenty of time to observe its movements. Except there's sort of an unintended comical effect here. The idea that it is almost again, you have a conflict of interests. What is advertised is this tremendous, deadly beast, and then yet what we have here is this slow-moving, completely ineffective creature that isn't anything like what Ash described. And there are two reasons this is. One, the limitations of technology. The idea that this individual is wearing a suit that restricts his movements. But two, the script demands it. The idea that we need an extended scene of tension. The idea that it doesn't happen too quickly. Like in Prometheus, that scene is over before you know it. There's no time to cultivate tension. The idea that suspense and tension take time to develop, and in the scene where the creature reaches out with its hand and startles us, that works because we are given enough time to let our guards down. And the idea that you need enough time in a scene like this to feel tense, to wind the spring, so to speak. It's the same idea in Aliens here, where we are given enough time to observe our surroundings and see Newt stuck to the wall, cocooned to the wall, and then we see the egg, and then we see it slowly open, and the idea that from one point of view this works because it gives us enough time to feel that tension. On the other hand, it's somewhat transparent, and it flies in the face of the so-called lethality of these creatures. The idea that they are presented, especially in James Cameron's version of the beast, as quick. Even the facehuggers themselves, when they set upon Ripley, they are fast. They are fast, they leap out. But when they set upon Newt, you have that transparent device to slow them down in favor of prolonging the scene in order to create tension. But this has to wrestle with the idea that you are also sort of disarming the creature. You're declawing it, so to speak. So it's not perfect. There's always going to be different forces at work in scenes like this. You know, the script versus the visuals, the creature versus the screenplay, or the technology. And in this particular instance, we have Ripley coming to the rescue with her weapons. And this is one of my favorite shots of the film, actually, where we see a creature, a xenomorph, come to investigate the hurly-burly. And then Ripley blows it away. You can see it leaping from wall to wall. 1, 2, 3. And you compare it to this scene here, where suddenly the technology either limits the creature or the screenplay sort of slows the creature down on purpose. And again, it feels transparent from that point of view. So take your pick. It's one or the other. And what do you do in a situation like that? How do you disguise the fact that you are essentially watching an illusion? The idea that, okay, this creature is either a man in a suit who moves too slowly because his suit is holding him back, literally, and the idea that you have the screenplay, which requires that the creature be slowed down, which also forces us to stare at it. The idea that, okay, this is the scene in the film where we unveil the beast. And why does the scene work? Listen to the sounds, the hissing and the steam, but also the visuals. There's smoke everywhere. There are lights everywhere. There are different points of view. I mean, you have the reflections on Ripley's helmet. You have sound everywhere. You have smoke everywhere. And what is this? What is the purpose of this? The purpose of this is to conceal the beast. And again, you have this extreme close-up as it's getting closer and closer as the lights in front of Ripley light up, reflecting on her helmet, and you have the beast hidden. Now, again, why doesn't it kill her in this moment? Why doesn't it just seize upon her and end her right then and there? Instead, it takes its time, slow enough that Ripley is able to respond in kind and eject it from the ship. And again, you have an interesting contrast here because the beast is able to grab onto the ledges of the ship. You know, it's being sucked out into space. You have this weird sort of contrast, the idea that it is crawling like a snail out of its shell onto the floor earlier in the scene, and yet when it is being thrown out of the airlock by the vacuum of space, it is able to grab it, and not only does it grab it, but it latches on, and you hear the sound effect, the power of that. So there's this weird sort of contrast between strength and fertility. And I'm not saying it's perfect, mind you. And again, the idea, you have the technological limitations of the latex suit, and you have the demands of the screenplay. And these are all forces that are at work, and they're not entirely in harmony at times. You know, it creates something that is at times cacophonous. And the idea, is the scene effective overall? Yes, it is. The jump scare where it reaches out with its hand, you know, and the way that the creature is camouflaged in such a way that it blends in with its surroundings. This all works very well. And the idea that, you know, we are given enough time to let our guard down, and then later in the scene, there's enough time as the scene unfolds that we are left experiencing what Ripley feels in that scene. Again, most of the scene is focused on her. You know, it's between her and the creature, but a large amount of the scene after the creature crawls out from its hiding spot, we are spent looking at Ripley, seeing how scared she is. And the idea that the creature itself, even when we are looking directly at it, is concealed by smoke, by light, by sound. It is obscured. And even in these moments, and only for brief instances like this shot here, can we see it in complete detail. But even now, it is not a full shot of the creature. Again, it is waist up. It is still obscured by the way that the camera is looking at it. And we do not see essentially a full body shot of it until this next bit. Now, this scene, why doesn't this work? Why is this scene ridiculous, in my opinion? And the idea, in my opinion, the reason that this scene does not work is, one, you can see the creature. Again, the idea that it is in full view. And again, it's not easy to see necessarily here. Okay, why is this? It's kind of silly, the idea that you have this creature and it's in outer space, and suddenly he is paralyzed, and the idea that he is unable to move. You know, he's suddenly in a catatonic state. He is paralyzed, and the idea that if you've ever seen a cat in outer space, the way that it responds to zero gravity, it's kind of comical. And the idea that suddenly, I mean, this scene is ridiculous for several reasons. And I'm not, when I say ridiculous, I don't mean, in my opinion, it's not my favorite scene in the film. Let's just put it that way. But the idea is, I think there's some unintentional comicality to it. The idea that you have this creature that has been ejected out into a vacuum, and it is frozen, you know, and it looks kind of ridiculous in the way that it bounces off the hull. And but another reason that it doesn't work is it's completely exposed. It's naked. As Bilbo Baggins said in regards to Smaug's weak point, old fool, there's a hollow patch just beneath the left breast, as bare and exposed as a snail out of its shell. And what we have here is the xenomorph, as bare and exposed as a snail out of its shell. Suddenly, we see the creature in full view, and not only that, but in a ridiculous position. On top of that, there is no smoke, there is no light, there is nothing to conceal it, and it is a dark shape, but it is revealed to us through the white background of the narcissist, which, in my opinion, like this is the outside of a set. You know, this is an actual building, if you may call it that. But again, it's not my favorite one in the film. It's not a visually perfect scene. It feels a little bit bare. The idea that when Wrigley said it looks not good in regards to the Nostromo landing, and you needed the atmosphere, you needed the smoke, and here we have a shot where there is no smoke, there is no atmosphere in space. Well, here you go. Here's the scene in the film where there's no atmosphere in space, you know, and it doesn't really look that good as far as I'm concerned. You see the creature and it's revealed, and the illusion is taken down for a moment. And when I showed this film to my classmates in high school, we had a science fiction course with Mrs. Brown. It was a good course. I liked it. And everyone in the class laughed at this specific shot. Why? Because it's ridiculous. And again, because the curtain is taken down. The creature is exposed. There is no light or smoke or sound to hide it, to conceal it from us. And on top of that, it's in a compromising position. And we see the necessity for Ridley's aesthetic in this scene. Why is there so much smoke? Why is it so dark? To hide the creature. And in a film like Alien Covenant, however, the beauty of digital effects and visual effects is you have a naked scene like this, right? You could, through post-production effects, I assume that they shot it this way not because they wanted to, but because, again, they had time constraints when they filmed this scene, which is perhaps why it doesn't look quite as good as it could otherwise. You know, this ending was something that they had to fight for, the idea of Ripley fighting off the baddie, which is ironic because, again, it's such an iconic scene. You know, it's where Ripley gets to be the hero of the film, you know, the heroine. It's like it's her moment, her defining moment, in the way that Eowyn is defined as more than just a mere woman in Lord of the Rings when she fights off the Witch King of Angmar at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. I am not a man, and you stand before my lord and my kin, and if you touch him, I will smite thee. The idea that that's her moment, you know, defined through battle, defined that it's the key moment, and in this scene, you know, it's a key moment, but it's one that they really had to fight for, and you know, it's perhaps why it doesn't look quite as good as it did. Now imagine if something like that happened today with Alien Covenant. You know, they had a scene, and they had to fight for it in production, you know, in regards to filming it and everything. Well, in post-production, they could add some of the obfuscating or visual aids, the idea that things that help maintain the illusion, they could add to this scene. You know, they could add grit or dirt to the narcissist, you know, that really used feature look, because here it's very sterile looking, the white plastic of the hull of the narcissist. It just doesn't look that good. It almost looks like a toy, despite the fact that, as far as I know, this is an actual building. You know, this is the set. This is an actual life-size replica of the narcissist, but it doesn't. It almost looks like a toy. You know, and with post-production digital effects, they could go in and touch everything up, you know, make it look better, you know, and that's part of the benefit. And then on top of that, again, the idea where you have the aliens or the xenomorph warriors in Alien, where they were trying to rectify that idea, where again you wanted to have the creature be convincing in any environment. The idea that in this scene where Ripley is able to survive because the creature is so slow, in the same sense that Newt is able to survive because the creature is slow, partly because of technological limitations, but also because the script demands it. But what if this is all the product of the technology that they had to work with? The idea, part of the reason that this was a Gothic film, I think, was because they needed it to be, to conceal this ridiculous creature. You know, the idea that, for the most part, it looks kind of silly. They needed to hide that. You know, they needed to hide the man in the suit. You know, what is actually real. They needed to sort of put a spin on things. They needed to shoot it a certain way to hide the ridiculous nature of it. The idea that it could just be a really nice Halloween costume. Well, that's not what they wanted. They wanted to treat it seriously, as a work of art, not as bare and exposed as a snail out of its shell. But what if they actually had the technology to bring to life the image in their minds? The idea that, okay, you could have a film where the creature is fast, it's violent. Not only would that change the way that it looks on screen, but it would also change the nature of the screenplay. Because what if in this situation the filmmakers had the tools at their disposal to make the creature fast, like really fast, like deadly fast? The idea, it's like George Romero's Dawn of the Dead versus Zack Snyder's. The idea that, okay, suddenly the nature of the screenplay and the action on screen changes according to the technology or according to the approach. The idea that suddenly you're dealing with these fast zombies as opposed to these slow zombies. It changes the events on screen, not just the aesthetic, but the way that the events themselves unfold. What would Ripley have done in this situation had the creature been fast? And they would have to rewrite the scene, most likely, or film it differently. And the idea that that's one reason I'm excited about Alien Covenant is the idea that we are dealing with a scene that is going to be different, not simply by virtue of technological limitations changing the aesthetic, but also the very nature of the scene itself. Suddenly, you have to be careful about having a slow creature. The idea in Alien, they can kind of get away with it because, again, the technological limitations are crowding that equation. It's not just the screenplay in that case, because the more quickly the creature is presented due to improvements in technology, the more transparent it becomes when suddenly the creature, for whatever reason, decides to stop being fast, like the T-1000 in Terminator 2, the idea at the steel mill, where he suddenly decides to start walking when for most of the film he is running, hell-bent for leather, and then suddenly he does not. It only makes that screenplay gimmick more transparent, and the idea is suddenly the emphasis is on good writing. And it really makes me wonder if in Alien Covenant they can overcome some of those hurdles that films like Terminator 2, which had the right technology to make the killer quick and fast, but the writing, the screenplay wasn't always up to snuff in that particular film. In Alien Covenant, will it be? And that is the question. So yeah, that concludes the video, I think. If you like the video, feel free to leave a fave. You can leave a comment in the comment section. I always enjoy reading those. If you like my videos in general, feel free to subscribe to my channel. Alien Day is tomorrow, actually, so I expect there to be plenty of news in regards to Alien Covenant as it nears release, and expect more videos in the future. And until then, thanks for watching, guys, and take care.